Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue watching the trial between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Let's watch. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. Let's watch and see if anything interesting comes out of my face.
Do you recall seeing photos from Amber Heard?
I have, but I don't remember when I saw them.
What do you recall about the photos?
Her face was bruised.
Do you recall where on her face you saw, on Amber's face you saw bruises?
I think they were around her eyes, but I couldn't be positive.
All right, so we're learning that she saw a picture of Amber with bruises around her eyes and indicating that Johnny had inflicted those wounds. Okay. It makes me wonder why Dr. Hughes did not want to talk to Dr. Anderson and just looked at the notes. I don't know.
Both were victims of abuse in their homes, but I thought he had been well controlled for decades. And then with Ms. Heard, he was triggered, and they engaged in what I saw as mutual abuse.
Oh, well, that's why I believe, who knows, Dr. Hughes, the Amber Heard forensic psychologist, didn't want to talk to Dr. Anderson, is because Dr. Anderson's opinion is that it was mutual abuse. And, you know, again, if I were on the jury and I heard that Dr. Hughes because, you know, there are a number of clinicians involved in the case available to talk with in person, and you only talked to those therapists that were on the record saying that Amber Heard was the victim and Johnny Depp was the perpetrator. Coincidentally, they were the individual therapists. Now, maybe I'm missing it. You know, maybe it's hard to keep track of all these names, that Dr. Hughes did talk to Dr. Anderson, but from my memory, it was only Dr. Anderson's notes that Dr. Hughes looked at. But so according to the couple therapists. Now, when I heard during the Dr. Hughes testimony, which in the timeline happens after that, later than this, they said it was just 4 sessions. And I remember thinking, like, well, just 4 sessions, you're not going to get much information. But she had actually 7 sessions total with all of them. And the sessions were seemingly on average 2.5 hours. So yeah, that's like 25 sessions or something, or I don't know, whatever, how the math works out, like 18 or 20 sessions. So, I mean, that still doesn't necessarily mean she has more information, but that's a lot of data, right? To observe them actually talking to each other repeatedly over many weeks and many sessions, hearing their report and concluding that it's mutual abuse. So, you know, that says something, I think. And also, she's saying that according to her conceptualization, that Johnny Depp, she's saying they were both heavily abused growing up. And for Johnny Depp, he kept his violent side under control for 20, 30 years, but then with Amber was triggered, particularly by her. Okay. I think that's very likely a sound conceptualization, given the limited information that I've received.
Sometimes I know she led on more than one occasion and started it to keep him with her, because abandonment and having him leave was her worst nightmare.
Interesting. Yeah, I've talked about this, I believe, already in this series of reaction videos. I know I've talked about it a lot on this channel, that with preoccupied individuals, borderline individuals could be characterized as a sort of preoccupied attachment, anxious attachment. These individuals are terrified of losing their proximity emotionally and physically from their partners. They went through a lot of abandonment or separation growing up. And the separation can take very obvious forms, like abandonment by a parent, that you're going through a divorce, one parent just moves out of state and you never see that parent again. Or your parents are suffering from drug addiction and there's childhood neglect and you get taken away by Child Protective Services and you go into a foster home for a while. That is another attachment abandonment. Or you're being abused by a parent and it feels like an abandonment because there's an abandonment of attunement and closeness. And even though the parents are there all the time, the abuse takes the form emotionally as an abandonment for the individual. Anyway, so for these individuals with these relational traumas, they can often engage in high conflict relationships, and in those relationships, sometimes a common configuration is to be with someone that is at the very least more avoidant than they are, meaning that when push comes to shove, they want to separate. When push comes to shove for preoccupied people, they want to move in. So it can create this pursuer-distancer situation, which often can result in, well, not often, but sometimes can result in abuse. Often abusive individuals are in a situation like this. And the avoidant person is more like, they're almost pathologically wanting to get out of conflict a lot faster. I don't know if we saw evidence of that in Johnny Depp, but at the very least, it looks like Amber, if she has borderline or she's on the spectrum, if this account is true, then in conflict, Johnny, given the way that he was growing up, the way his sister talks about how they would go into their room to escape, he would want to get away, which is often a good idea to take a break. These individuals need to tell the preoccupied person, I will be back, I'm not abandoning you. But often they don't, like 99.9% of the time, they just passive aggressively give the silent treatment and walk off because they're trying to passively send this message of hostility that I don't like the way you're treating me right now. It's not an effective way to do that. But they separate, and then this person, the preoccupied person, won't let them go or will get very upset or chase them around. And this is a flashpoint for violence. So we're hearing from the couple therapists that was a dynamic.
And I think he may have initiated it on occasions too. I'm less sure on.
Okay, there was an important detail. According to her, she saw most of the time, if not all the time, the violence was initiated by Amber Heard. She says maybe some of it was initiated by Johnny Depp, but I'm less sure about that. It says a lot. Now, of course, what Dr. Hughes would say is, you're not an expert in that, or at least you haven't demonstrated expertise in that. You didn't provide any, formal assessments, and you only had a certain amount of sessions with them, and that the assessment of that probably wasn't the primary focus. You're trying to help them with their conflict. You're not necessarily trying to determine who's to blame. You're going off of their account of things. But I will say, this is significant. This testimony is significant. She doesn't, I believe, have any reason to be biased towards Johnny Depp or Amber Heard. And according to her, and she seems quite relaxed as she's giving, this is the sort of testimony that I would give when I would be called into court. I didn't have a stake in any of it, so I would just answer freely and didn't care about what the consequences were. I mean, that's funny. I wouldn't say that. But I wasn't worried that by telling the truth, somehow I would be harming my career or something, right? The way that a forensic psychologist might worry. If they say something that helps the opposition, they might not ever get hired again. So I was more in this style, kind of like, well, I don't know. I kind of feel like, because I didn't want to spend hours prepping.
And how did you come to the understanding that on some occasions Miss Heard physically abused Mr. Depp?
Miss Heard reported that.
What did Miss Heard report to you?
That it was a point of pride, two things. It was a point of pride to her if she felt disrespected to initiate a fight, and her father had beaten her. She was not going to. And the second...
Okay, I think someone objected and interrupted her, but wow. Wow. I mean, I'm stunned at what she's saying, and she seems credible, does she not? Because she's not on either side. And I can see why Dr. Hughes, if she wants to put forth a particular thesis, would not want to talk to her, because this sounds credible, that according to her, Amber Heard told her that it was a point of pride for Amber Heard that she could provoke, let's re-listen to that, and get Johnny Depp to get in a physical fight with her, because she was about to say she was abused when she was a kid. And, I don't know where that was headed, but you could imagine a conceptualization of, well, one, violence is normalized for you. Two, you might have observed that in someone else. When they didn't want you to separate, they would provoke to create chaos. And people will do that. And a minority of borderline individual will do that as well. Not everyone, but they, the abandonment trauma is so severe, and the fear of being left alone is so severe that it will eclipse all other reason that the individual has. And so in the moment, you're just saying, I can't deal with this. And you're either shutting down or you're moving away. And the borderline individual is just so threatened by that, they will do anything to get you, to get a feeling back that you're engaged with them, that you are interacting with them, even if it is contentious. They would rather have you fighting and yelling and maybe even being violent than you walking out the door without knowing that you're coming back. Of course, you are going to come back, unless you're saying you're not, but you probably, these kinds of fights, someone walks away. But they'll do anything, and they learn over time that, well, if I poke this thing, it'll get them to engage. And I don't know about Amber, but I do know that for some people suffering from borderline will be so good at pushing people's buttons. It's a minority of people with borderline, but many people with borderline share this characteristics of they know exactly how to get under your skin, including myself as a therapist. I was working with someone that had this condition, and I hadn't really developed a conceptualization of them yet or a diagnosis yet, so it was early in treatment. But I won't go into details, but at first she was attacking me, but I started to think, oh, verbally she's attacking me, and at first I'm like, oh, this is interesting, and I just addressed it. I was saying things like, yeah, okay, I understand. She was essentially criticizing me, and yeah, okay, maybe I made a mistake, or let's talk about it, or I'm human and I'm trying my best, and sometimes I make the wrong call. It was sort of it wasn't like a specific criticism. It was kind of global about me as a human being. And, I was probably 10, 15 years into my career and felt confident as a therapist, and it didn't rattle me at first. I said, and it went on for 5 minutes, and then another 5 minutes, and then another 5 minutes. And I remember thinking, okay, I think I know what's going on. There's something going on characterologically with her, personality disorder-wise, and so I'm just going to frame it that way, and I'll listen and I'll remain in contact, but I'm not going to take this personally because I don't think there's any legitimate reason for the amount of energy that she has around this. And I also thought that her criticism was legit to some extent, and I was even agreeing with her. I was like, yeah, you're right, I probably should have done this and that, but it wasn't like an egregious claim against my professionalism. But then at like the 15-20 minute mark or something, she started to weasel her way into my personality, past the defenses, past my professional shield, and I had a full-on panic attack. I mean, it was like I kept, but my heart starts to pound, my head starts to sweat, I start to have this desperate desire to run out of the office. I'm like, I never want to see her again. I never want to be a therapist again, and I can't think straight, and I'm starting to get dizzy. Full-on just anxiety attack. And this doesn't happen very often. In fact, this probably is the worst, by far, manifestation of that experience in therapy. And when I did my dissertation on difficult moments for therapists, I thought about myself, and I thought, well, what's a difficult moment for me? And this is the one that came to mind, so I wrote a lot about it. But anyway, I interviewed a lot of other seasoned therapists about their difficult moments, and they were often kind of similar. Anyway, but looking back, I just thought it was masterful. And I've seen this before, personally and professionally. People with borderline have this, not all of them, but a minority of them have this really good way of just like knowing exactly what to say to get under your skin. And it went obviously straight to my core. I mean, she didn't just kind of get in there. I mean, she got deep in there, and she didn't know anything about me. It wasn't one of those situations where she had things to go off of. She didn't have really much to go off of. But that's the thing about people with this condition, is that depending on their defenses within borderline, they might learn that, again, any contact is better than no contact. And if I went through abuse, I kind of have an inner abuser, and I want to abuse other people. So there's that manifestation of, the projective identification aspect of it. And the skill that they learn from a very early age is very quickly evaluating, sometimes below the surface, subconsciously, the weaknesses and the sensitivities of other people. And they almost, without trying, know how to get under people's skin within a few minutes of talking to you. And they're not scheming, they're not psychopaths, but it's important to them to notice, because they believe they need to know that information if they need to use it in the future, right? So, but anyway, let's rewind this. And I'm not saying that any of that is Amber, but yeah, I'm astonished at this. This has a lot of weight, actually, because it's so specific and it's direct words from Amber, right? So let's rewatch this.
And leave was her worst nightmare, and I think he may have initiated it on occasions too. I'm less sure on.
And how did you come to the understanding that on some occasions Ms. Heard physically abused Mr. Depp?
Ms. Heard reported that.
What did Ms. Heard report to you?
That it was a point of pride, two things. It was a point of pride to her if she felt disrespected to initiate a fight, and her father had beaten her. She was not going to. And the second one is what she reported to me, which is if he was going to leave her to de-escalate from the fight, she would strike him to keep him there. She would rather be in a fight than have him leave. Right.
So Amber, by this point, had been in a lot of therapy, I believe, or just knew this about herself, because that's her admitting. I'm just going to take a guess and say Amber to Dr. Anderson didn't say, I approve of this behavior, that when he wants to leave, then I'm proud of myself. Well, she basically even said that. She said, Dr. Anderson said that Amber Heard had as a point of pride. So I guess she was proud of it. But either way, we're hearing that Amber Heard disclosed openly to Dr. Anderson that when Johnny Depp was distant or wanted to separate, that she was proud of herself, that she knew how to manipulate him into a physical altercation. I mean, she didn't say specifically physical altercation, but I think that's essentially what she's referring to. And as a matter of routine, that's how she handled that, because she was so desperate for being alone. Wow. I mean, wow. So can there be incidents of Johnny Depp being coercive towards her as well, or even overall? Yes. Given that, yes. But those statements from someone who observed them, the jackhammering, the rapid fire, not letting him have a voice, I'm proud of myself that I know how to provoke him into a physical fight because I'm desperate not to be alone, and I don't want him to have the freedom to leave an argument with me. And we heard from the sister that he would go into his own bathroom in his own house to, I'm guessing, to lock the door and just be alone and get away from her. That does not sound like victim behavior from Amber, right? It could be that it's mutual abuse, but it doesn't sound like a victim. It could be, you could conclude that, but it doesn't sound like that.
In the first session, just how bad the relationship is, just how mean they are to one another. And at that point, because I'm typing quickly as they go along, I'm switching into a different voice, more about the process between them, where she has, I believe, interrupted him. He says no more about what she says about him. And it's just that they're fighting and she has a hard time. She bites the bait. She can't let him talk, is my recollection. And from this, that's kind of what that is. So it gives me a sense of what they're doing at home. They're each reporting. This is what we say to each other.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Okay, last professional bit here. She said earlier, I don't think I included it, that she writes her clinical notes during the session, which a lot of people will do. I don't recommend people do it because if you're going to be really listening, it could interfere with that. Now, of course, I will take notes, usually in the very beginning of the first couple sessions, but to do that every single time could make treatment a little bit harder, particularly if you're doing it throughout the session. You know, there's a different mindset of like, oh, I'm listening, I'm being compassionate, I'm evaluating, I'm trying to picture what's going on, I'm trying to help. That's a different mindset to, okay, what do I need to type such that I am following my ethical guidelines and I'm also providing me little notes to remind me of what happened at this moment. It's a very, very different mindset, right? Now, I don't know, maybe for her, she's really good at it. She can do both those tasks well. Maybe she only does the typing thing mode very occasionally. Who knows? But you know, I don't recommend people do that unless they absolutely know that they can manage it. Because you know, a lot of people think they can multitask when they can't. And imagine that you're talking to your therapist in session and you're getting into some really heavy stuff and they're like, oh, okay, yeah. It would, I don't know, I wouldn't feel good about that. So again, note-taking is a different kind of thing. There's similar risks to note-taking of you're listening and then you just start writing things down. But every session, now the reason why she said she did it is because she said she would be writing her notes for a long period of time every day if she waited until after sessions to write her notes. And I absolutely sympathize with that. It can be a hardship for therapists to keep up with their session notes, particularly at the end of the day when you just want to go home and have dinner. And I get that. But the solution for me, actually, is learn how to take notes very, very quickly. Literally within 15 seconds, I have a system where I can very quickly document what happened in the session. Is it very detailed? No. Now, I don't have clients where I need to be very detailed, but it's detailed enough, and there's that. So anyway, that's the last little professional bit that I will say. They just got into interpreting the notes, Dr. Anderson, and she was saying that she noticed that, well, let's rewind that. I think she was saying something like she noticed that Amber was over-talking.
At any point during the first session, did Ms. Heard interrupt Mr. Depp when he was trying to talk?
Yes, she talked over him. She had rapid fire talking.
Right, there's that reiteration of a frequent interrupting communication style and a rapid fire way of talking.
It's so when she said in terms of physical abuse that he hits her, a no closed fist means an open hand slap to me. And she says that she hits back and now she starts it and sometimes hits him first because her history is having been violated by her father physically. And just out of pride, if she's, a lot of things trigger her. And if she's triggered, she would hit him first.
Okay, a little bit more detail as she is explaining what her notes mean. And yeah, wow. It certainly sounds like mutual abuse to me, given what I've heard thus far, particularly from her. And she's telling us Amber's report. And as I said earlier, I have watched, this is like day 3. I've watched like day 15 or something with Dr. Hughes. And you just have to wonder, like, was this considered? Because to get a statement from a clinician that Amber Heard said that it was a point of pride for her that she could provoke Johnny into being violent with her, it just seems like that would have been considered. And all of the self-reporting to the past therapist that you considered so strongly, and all the self-reporting from Amber that she reported in the evaluation and in the tests, it would seem like you would look for some other data that is coming from sources that might have had an opportunity to have a more accurate point of view. You just think that you would at least and maybe she did. Maybe I'm sure Dr. Hughes did consider it. It was data that I'm sure she reviewed, but yeah.
And the he you're referring to is Johnny Depp, correct?
Yes.
When you said that she sometimes hits Johnny first because of pride, what did you mean?
She was sensitive to feeling disrespected, and a number of other things. And if she felt disrespected, she had come out of her background history feeling that her pride needed to dominate, and she needed to stand up for herself.
Interesting. So we're getting a specific conceptualization that because she was disrespected in the past by her parents or her father, she was very sensitive and triggered when disrespected as an adult. And she also said a lot of things triggered Amber, but this is one of them, the disrespect. Then that would justify hitting Johnny Depp, which, yeah, that's a common enough conceptualization or way of seeing why someone would believe that it's okay or justified, or at least in the moment, that they could be physically abusive to someone. That, again, I keep talking about Will Smith because I think it's a similar possible conceptualization. In brief, he witnessed his dad abusing his mom. He thought it was all his fault when he was a young child, and convinced himself he's a coward, had a lot of trauma around that. Fast forward to an adult, he sees a man, Chris Rock, saying a joke about his wife, and it's not just Chris Rock, right? It's just like millions of people making fun of Jada Pinkett Smith, and this urge to not be that coward, to fight back, to make it right. And now I have a chance because I'm tall and strong and powerful and rich and famous. So I'm going to walk out on that stage and I'm going to slap my father, Chris Rock, that kind of thing. We could imagine, according to Dr. Anderson's conceptualization, that for Amber it was a similar trauma of being a child and being disrespected and being harmed and abused, and all the time feeling like I'm a weakling, I'm weak, I'm a coward, I should have fought back. And that's one of the unfortunate things about being abused, that the victim will often blame themselves, which is just so tragic. So it's one thing to go through abuse. It's another thing to have the abuse get in your head where you think it's your fault. And yeah, it's just so tragic and I don't know, depressing to me to a certain extent. So for Amber, we could imagine that would be the case. Who knows? And then as an adult says, if anyone even slightly disrespects me, I'm going to stand up for myself. But if your version of standing up for yourself involves the things that were modeled to you when you were a kid, then you're going to be abusive, right?
When Ms. Heard told you that Johnny Depp hits her or slaps her, Johnny Depp was not present, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And it wasn't plural. It was, she referred to, well, I wrote he hits her. Yes. So maybe it was plural.
But he was not present when she made that assertion.
He was not.
Did Ms. Heard tell you that she socked Mr. Depp?
Yes. She was describing kind of the progression of the physical violence.
Did you have any understanding of what she meant when she admitted that she socks Mr. Depp?
Yes, because there were 3 lines above this that explained the progression a bit. And I've already said what it was. She felt she had to hit him back if he hit her. And so she always did.
Okay, a little bit more detail. She stated she had to hit him back if he hit her. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it just sounds like a lot of violence between the two of them, and almost, at least from Amber, a policy that that's what she does. It wasn't an anomaly. It wasn't regretted. It was a decided policy. So this therapy is happening in 2015, and the May 21st incident was in 2016, when Johnny Depp said allegedly that he wanted to leave her, and then allegedly she became violent with him. So what the couple therapist is saying right now, actually, when I think about it, is very emulative of at least what Johnny Depp's lawyers are saying, is that she, Amber Heard, has a policy of violence when Johnny would ask to separate physically or otherwise, and to want a divorce is the ultimate separation, and then she has a policy of being violent. We don't know if that policy was at play in that moment, but it certainly plays into the Johnny Depp narrative. But it's interesting to me that just a year prior to divorce, I think the official divorce was in 2017, but their agreement to divorce was in mid-2016. And it's interesting to me that just a year prior, they were trying to make it work, and Amber Heard was disclosing a lot to the couple therapist, seemingly not to cover her own butt, as we say, meaning that Amber Heard was telling the couple therapist things that would be condemning to her, probably because she wanted to be honest, and she was actually trying to improve the relationship, which of course you would want to do in therapy. And it just makes you wonder, when the time came that she realized that maybe the relationship was over, when Johnny Depp said he wanted a divorce, that, again, this is complete speculation, there'd be no way to know this, but it could play into the Johnny Depp narrative that at that moment she starts to reflect back, oh my God, I mean, there's this long trail of evidence that I was violent with him, and if he comes out with that, that will be humiliating to me and could end my career. So I've got to get out ahead of that and present my side. And then she talks with her friends and family, and they kind of feed into it, and then you start going down a road, and then you end up writing a piece in the Washington Post. I don't know. It's notable that a year before they split, Amber Heard was being that honest with the couple therapist. I think that's notable.
Doing he was fucked up, as she would say, on a lot of drugs, and she slapped him because he was being incoherent and talking about being with another woman.
Okay, another incident that I think was reported by Amber Heard, that Johnny Depp was very intoxicated and talking about being with another woman, probably in the midst of a conflict, right? It's not like, I highly doubt Johnny Depp just woke up in the morning and said, I'm gonna try to hurt my spouse. It was probably mutual jabs, verbal jabs, hurt, triggering. And you just have to wonder about his drug use back then, if it was a part of, obviously it was a part of it, but if it was intertwined in this, that it was a way that he could escape without physically being gone. Anyway, but I think his drug abuse predated Amber Heard, or I imagine it did. Anyway, and then Amber strikes him because he said that. So, yeah, I mean, I'm guessing y'all have watched this because it was a couple weeks ago, and you've already been down the road of like, wow. But, I mean, wow.
Did she tell you that he had hit her first, or was she the one who initiated the slap?
She initiated that one because I think she felt demeaned and threatened
And I'd love to hear Dr. Hughes' opinion on that. How do you explain that? How do you explain everything that she's saying? How does that fit? Of course, what she would say is either I discount everything that therapist is saying because I think that she's biased, or the account was wrong, or the notes are wonky, so how can she possibly remember exactly what was happening? Or she would say, well, yeah, in the midst of an overall coercive, abusive, controlling, intimidating, threatening relationship by Johnny Depp, there were occasional bad behavior from Amber Heard, and that was an example of that. But it's hard to characterize it that way given what we've seen so far.
What did you mean by that?
She loved him. He loved her. She believed that she wasn't stupid. She knew that what they were doing wasn't healthy. And so she wanted to divorce him, but she didn't.
Interesting. Makes sense. Common that a year before divorce, Amber Heard is reporting that she recognized that their relationship was unwell, and she wanted to divorce, but she loved him as he did her and did not want to leave him. Yeah. I mean, that's a part of this that I'm glad is being discussed here, because from the outside, it might just be like, what are you people doing? When you're in love and you're super attached, that's how it is, right? You'll put up with a lot. So that's what drew them together. Probably a lot of good times, a lot of attraction, a lot of laughter, a lot of warmth at times. So, yeah.
Do you recall the names of any of her entourage?
One was Rocky.
Directing your attention to the last snippet from that session, will she have advantage if she leaves him but files with police for abuse first? Was that a question that she asked you?
Yes, this was her talking out loud, trying to strategize for herself.
Wait, what? I wish she would have allowed. Let's rewind that.
Do you recall the names of any of her entourage?
One was Rocky.
Directing your attention to the last snippet from that session, will she have advantage if she leaves him but files with police for abuse first?
So, according to the couple therapist, in an individual meeting with Amber Heard, she said, will I have an advantage if I divorce first and file with the police that I was abused? Okay, so on the surface, that doesn't look good for Amber Heard, right? That she's strategizing not from a place of wanting to call the police for safety, but because she wants to get back at him or is looking for some sort of public persona or image that she wants to put out there, wants to control the narrative. Will it be better for me to do that? On the other hand, if she is someone that's being abused, which we could argue, that she is someone being abused because they're both abusing each other, possibly. That's one way of characterizing what we've seen thus far. And she is sitting there saying, well, yeah, it's probably occurred to me that I would call the police, and I have at times, but I don't want to because I want to try to work this out. We're in couple therapy. I'm trying to help us out. So I don't want to go to that extreme. But if we're going to divorce, then I will finally, because he deserves it. He's a perpetrator, and I'm going to finally get justice for this. You make the call as to which one that is.
She reported always hitting him back as a point of pride, but admitted that she eventually initiated the hitting herself. Is the she you're referring to Ms. Heard?
It is.
All right, well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.